Chapter 32. A Bark in the Dark. But you can't blame me for not wanting to be held, locked down in a cell where the soul can't dwell. Soon after my trip to Philadelphia, I was back in Valhalla Correctional Facility. My third day there, I spit in the face of a captain and was sentenced to a year and a month of solitary confinement. They put me in lockdown block 3K. That was my home for almost a year. Ray Copeland was a social worker in Valhalla. He was also my uncle. The youngest of my mother's siblings, Ray had grown up in Mount Vernon and was close to his sister. They would speak to one another on the phone a few times a week and see each other at family gatherings. I didn't know where I was during those family reunions that he told me about because I don't remember meeting Ray until one night at a club. Waz's girlfriend Keisha told me that some guy had come up to her claiming to be my uncle. But when I looked over at him, I knew we had to be related since he looked just like my Aunt Vern. We didn't talk that night, just introduced ourselves and kept it moving. But a few months later, when one of the prison guards told me that he wanted to visit me in my cell, I let him in. Ray wasn't assigned to my unit, but he said my mother had urged him to come see me. She told him that she was scared for me always being in and out of jail and felt she had no way of reaching me. Ray didn't know how true that was. He didn't say much during those first couple of visits, which was a good thing because I wasn't trying to talk to him anyway. But he seemed to sense right away that I was losing my life. What do you know about me? I asked him. Not much, but I know that jail isn't a place for any man, especially if he has a new son to take care of and a girlfriend at home that loves him. He also told me that I was wasting my talent. For the next few months, Uncle Ray came to see me almost 3 times a week. He said he wasn't there to judge me, he just wanted to help, give me some tips on how to improve my situation and bring some light into my life. Over the years, I refused to listen to anyone that kicked it to me that way. X would bark at them and bite their hand off before anyone could even begin to speak of upliftment or purpose or light. But months in solitary confinement gave me nothing but time to think. There was a freedom and a comfort there that I had felt many times before. Being alone day after day in the dark and the quiet allowed my mind to take me places that I had never gone before. And one cold night, I just closed my eyes and reached out for the sky. I come to you hungry and tired. You give me food, let me sleep. I come to you weak. You give me strength, and that's deep. Grandma always said the Lord was with me. She said that all I needed was the faith. So I put her words to the test. Would He talk to me? Would He answer my call? You call me a sheep and lead me to green pastures, only asking that I keep the focus in between the chapters. You give me the word and only ask that I interpret, and give me the eyes that I may recognize the serpent. You know I ain't perfect, but you'd like me to try, unlike the devil who just wants me to lie until I die. Lord, why is it that I go through so much pain? All I saw was black. All I felt was rain. I come to you because it's you who knows. You showed me that everything was black because my eyes were closed. That night in Valhalla, in solitary confinement, I wrote my first prayer. Chapter 33. Home. A home is what you make it. Growing up, Tashira never lived in the projects, but the only two options she had to find a place to live after we left Bonita's house were School Street and Mulford Gardens. She chose Mulford. Mulford was an enclosed set of brown 3-story buildings that sat a few blocks above Warburton Avenue. It was a far less violent place than School Street, defined by more of a wannabe player community than the you better not come up in here attitude you found in my hood. And $314 a month got her a 2-bedroom ground floor apartment with a living room, bathroom, and a large walk in kitchen. When I came home from Valhalla, I moved in with her and Xavier and decided to make it as nice as I could. Since he was born, Xavier had been my heart. I was so proud of him. My first, a boy. One night, when he was only 3 weeks old, I brought him to the studio with me. There were a lot of rappers in the lounge that night, and they were going back and forth in a cipher. Two of the MCs in the group were pretty bad, though. And after a few minutes, anytime one of them started to rhyme, Xavier would let out a big yawn. Without fail, when they started spitting, my little wrinkled baby would start yawning in their face. Yeah, that's my boy right there. He knows what's up. As he got older, I brought him everywhere with me. I just wrapped him up in a carrier on my chest, grabbed his bottle, and we were out. Other kids always loved to play with him. When are you bringing Xavier back again? they would ask me when it was time to take him home. I didn't really know how to be a father, though. How would I? I never had one. But but Tashira just kept telling me to spend time with him and do what comes naturally. So that's what I did. Over the years, I had learned some painting skills from my Uncle Pinky and kind of liked doing it. So the first thing I did was buy some brushes and paint from the local hardware store and turn Xavier's room dark blue. Then I painted the living room walls of the apartment all black with a thick gray stripe across the top. I built a bench for Xavier in the kitchen where he could eat and a table for Tashira and me, and strung up a portable fan from one of the pipes to give us some air. We put blinds on the living room windows, a carpet on the bedroom floor that Fatima and me stole from a store in Getty Square, and got the washing machine to work in the kitchen. When I burned some frankincense, you would never have thought that this apartment was in the projects. But we were still broke. I tried doing the job thing, but it never worked out. First, I worked at the post office in White Plains, lifting big gray bags of mail on the conveyor belts in the back. I didn't last 1 week having to do nothing but sort shit out all day. Another time, I got a demolition job in a warehouse and had spent 10 hours knocking down walls and breaking up stoves and radiators. That kept me in shape and I liked the work, but after 3 weeks, the boss laid me off because I was the youngest guy in the crew. That was fucked up. I was the one who had to put up with his bullshit up all day. Whenever I was working, I gave Tashira whatever money I made. I would just keep $30 or $40 for myself and tell her to use the rest for the phone bill or food for Xavier. Whenever Y or Darren hit me off with dough, I would give her some of that too. She was the one really busting her ass. Tashira always appreciated that. Boo Boo always had a job, and some of them were real crazy. For a few months, she actually worked at this General Motors automotive plant in upstate New York. She had a spot on the assembly line. She used to wake up every morning at 5 a.m. so she could catch the bus upstate and make the 6:15 bell. Her job was to install the rear view mirror and the roof rack on all these different cars. The salary was huge, almost $800 a week. But after a few weeks, her back started hurting badly. And when the plant left New York and moved out west, Boo Boo decided to put an end to her auto worker career. Whatever jobs we had, though, we still had to buy groceries a whole month at a time and hope that they would last us a full 30 days. We never had the money for soda or juice. Instead, we had to survive on nothing but water and iced tea. I loved Kool Aid, but iced tea was cheaper because you didn't have to add sugar. Most of the time, we would pull it off, but the last 4 or 5 days of the month, we'd always be down to having no food in the house, and the two of us would fight over who ate the last bit of cereal. When it came down to it, though, I knew that I could get a meal with a dollar. A dollar would get me 50 cents worth of turkey meat, a roll, and a water for a quarter. If I had an extra 25 cents, then I would buy a loose cigarette. But even that wasn't necessary because you could always find somebody with a spare one. So $1 was all I needed. If I had $5, I was great. Unless it was her sisters, Tashira rarely wanted anybody to come over to visit us in Mulford. She said she didn't want anyone in the projects in her business, always knocking on the door trying to borrow something. So she just went to work every day and stayed to herself. Where your girlfriend be at, X? What? Is she too good to come outside? Chicks in Mulford used to always whine to me. I was always out though, and that's why I saw more of the dirt. As in most projects, people were always getting killed in Mulford. Every week you would hear about so and so's cousin getting shot or something, or someone killing themselves in a car accident. It's just messed up when you knew the person who was killed and the person who did the killing, and they live right next door to each other. After my trip to Philly, my little brother Joe and I started talking more often. And in the summer of '94, he came to live with me. He said him and our father were beefing and he needed to get away. I told him he was family and could stay with me as long as he needed to. That spring, I had started selling mixtapes again to make some money. I wasn't fucking with any more jobs and I wanted to keep giving to Shira something. Her sisters were already whispering in her ear about how I wasn't helping out enough. So when Joe came, I got him to help me walk around Yonkers and sell my tapes. Or at least I got him to carry the case. We had a good time together. When I only put two or three songs on a tape instead of the full 60 minutes because I couldn't stand to wait that long for the copying to finish, he wouldn't give me away. And he wouldn't start laughing when I sold someone a blank until the coast was clear. I had to make sure those victims weren't in a car or had a Walkman with them so they wouldn't notice until later that their $10 had bought them a bunch of dead air. After we got rid of everything, then we go into School Street or Slow Bomb and hang out. I taught my brother how to gamble and shoot dice. And since I saw that he had stayed smoking weed since the night in Philly, I taught him how to properly roll a blunt. I hadn't had somebody that I could run with like that in a long time. Someone who knew how I got down but wouldn't judge the things that I did. I thought maybe that's what having a brother was for. And that summer, even though nothing new was happening with my music, I actually stayed out of trouble. I also started going over to my grandmother's house again. Grandma was proud of me when I showed her my Born Loser single and smiled a lot when I told her about some of the songs I had made and the shows I had done. I brought Xavier over to see her a lot, and just like I was her first grandchild, Xavier became her first great grandchild. She loved seeing me with him. She said she always knew that I would have a boy. I loved my grandmother. For as long as I could remember, she had always been there for me. She believed in me, protected me, loved me. And that summer, I was happy to be able to show her the man and the father that I had become. But the good feeling didn't last long. In July of that year, my grandmother was admitted to the hospital for cancer treatment. I had known for a while that she was battling the disease because occasionally over the years she would get sick and have to check herself into the hospital. But she always came out in a few days, so nobody in the family ever thought too much of it. My grandmother was a nurse. She could take care of herself. This time was different. Do you need anything, Grandma? Every afternoon, I would walk up the block to Yonkers General Hospital to keep her company. All she ever said she wanted was fruit, so I used to bring her all that I could find: apples, oranges, plums, watermelon. She loved purple seedless grapes. I bought her anything that she wanted. That's my grandbaby, she would say when I'd come back holding a big plastic bag from the store. That was when she could still talk. My grandmother had worked in New Rochelle Hospital for more than 20 years looking after other people, and my entire life she had looked after me. Now it was my turn to return the favor. Most afternoons, Joe would come with me, and him and I would sit by her bedside for as long as the doctors would allow us. They never gave you enough time. On September 21st, 1994, Mary Ella Holloway passed away. I wanted to die with her. Oh, Lord my God, in thee do I put my trust. Save me from all them that persecute me and deliver me. Outside the studio, a woman in rags crouches beside an empty office building, sitting on a piece of brown cardboard with her head bent down between her knees. The woman didn't see the fleet of cars come to a stop in front of her and a wad of $20 bills that DMX placed in her blue and white coffee cup. You hungry? Startled, the woman looks up and sees a star standing over her. If you're hungry, then use this to get yourself something to eat. The cash came out of his front jeans pocket. Money he left the house with added to his winnings from the few minutes he spent playing pool. This wouldn't be the first time I had seen X give money on a whim to a hungry person that he happened to pass, and the reaction from the less fortunate one was always the same. Thank you, the woman mumbles, hesitantly fingering the bills. Thank you so much. Don't thank me, thank him, X whispers to her. I didn't do it. I was just giving it to give to you. The woman's eyes fill with water, and as if on cue, a tear starts to fall down her cheek. And when your time comes, and it will come, remember not to be afraid to fulfill your purpose. I like to give, X tells me later. I think of the Thanksgiving celebrations that he sponsors every year at Nepperhan in the name of his grandmother, or the time he and his wife spend every Christmas Day at the Children's AIDS Ward at Harlem Hospital, unadvertised and unreported. To see the smile on a child's face when you give them something that they've always wanted, I'll cry for that and not be ashamed. But what about you? When do you get given anything? The Lord has blessed me. I have a true wife, beautiful kids, my dogs. I got cars, plenty of toys, so I don't need anything anymore. But for real, dog, I don't want anybody to give me nothing because you'll probably fuck around and give it to me and I won't be able to play with it. Chapter 34. Make a move. Stop, drop, shut them down, open up shop. That's how Rough Riders roll. When Wah and Darren told me that they had set up shop in Baltimore, Maryland to get money, I didn't hesitate. I knew I wasn't the hustling type, but I was willing to give it a shot. I was tired of being broke and I wanted to get out of YO. We left on a Friday, and when I jumped in the back of the car that night to cross the George Washington Bridge and traveled the 200 miles south on I 95, I didn't realize that besides a few visits home, Baltimore would be the place where I would spend the next few years. We had two different home bases set up on the west side of the city. At least eight of us at a time would work two 12-hour shifts. And after a few weeks in Baltimore, I confirmed to myself again that I wasn't with the hustling thing. Not that it wasn't a profitable operation. I mean, I had never seen that many people in one place get high before. It felt like almost everyone in the city was lined up on one corner or another waiting on weed or dope already. But after 6 hours having to stand outside in the same spot, my feet would go completely numb, and the cops always seemed to love to arrest me for just standing there. I couldn't take much of that. You know what? I think I'll be in the house. I'm the rapper. I'm going to write something. It's 2 o'clock. It's 2 o'clock, and I'm just about to hit the street. Till I knock off this rock, I don't get to eat. Sometimes it's like that's the only reason why I hustle. Step on toes, strong arm, and show a little muscle. Ain't no real dough. That's why a nigga feel so frustrated. I hate it. Seeing crab niggas that made it. And I'm robbing cash just as broke as myself. Living foul and ain't looking out for my health. Where's the wealth? So, like I did as a kid in Yonkers, I quickly found myself walking all over Baltimore, from the west side to the east side, up North Avenue, down the inner harbor, just soaking up all the different people and places and communities. That's what I love to do, and I ended up connecting the crew to so many people we would never have met if I wasn't out meeting people like that. I would just talk to folks I'd see walking on the street or brothers hanging on a block. We'd talk, smoke, and then I'd always hit them with some rhymes. Rapping was a universal language. Yo, shorty, you all right? Who you with? I don't think that kind of social interaction could have happened as fast in any other city. There was something about Baltimore. Sure, there were a lot of cats who hated New York niggas, but for the most part, brothers in Baltimore enjoyed meeting people they didn't know. And so did the sisters. If a chick heard that you were from out of town, you and your boys could probably work their hospitality to get a meal that same night. There were also a lot of Ma's in Baltimore to meet. A Ma was the older woman on a block who had been there for forever. She knew everyone, saw everything, and had everyone's respect. How you doing, Ma? You all right? Let me get that bag for you. Brothers were always very polite to the neighborhood Ma because she always threw down on the cooking tip or let you run through the back of our house to get away when the police were chasing. The word on the street was that if you took care of Ma, you took care of the hood. And if you took care of the hood, you were always good. There were bullshit Ma's too, though. The nosy ones that you had to include in your hustle to avoid them ratting you out. They got different treatment. Ma, just please fucking tell me what you need. Right away, it felt refreshing to be in a place with new streets and new people. Nobody knew my rep, and I had to learn a new set of rules. It was a thrill. It felt like I was invisible, like I was free to do what I wanted to do without the burdens of judgment or expectation. But because of the drug game, Baltimore streets were always hectic. The city was filled with stick up boys who would pop their weapon at a moment's notice. It was crazy, far worse than New York. In Baltimore, kids run up to someone in broad daylight, no problem. Pop, pop. Whenever I came back to Baltimore after being home for a few days, invariably someone had been killed while I was away. It would be the cool niggas too, never someone who was getting down in a way where death was a part of what they were doing. It was more like, why did they have to shoot little Terry? But like Yonkers, Baltimore was a small world. Everybody knew everybody. And after a couple of months being down there, meeting different folks, I could walk anywhere without a problem. Boomer may have had something to do with that. He stayed by my side every day. that I was down there and quickly became the dog not to fuck with. I think he liked being in Baltimore more than I did. There were more fences to climb, more alleys to run through, and definitely more cats to kill. There were at least 2 or 3 stray cats in almost every alley in Baltimore, so Boomer was always on the hunt. Almost every time I turned around, he had a dead animal in his mouth. One summer, he kept piling all of his kill in the corner of this one alley, and by the middle of July, must have been about 20 or 30 dead cats thrown on top of each other. Boomer wouldn't let anybody touch them, and it stank like crazy. It felt good to get so much love in the city because technically I was the weakest nigga in the crew. Because I wasn't hustling, I was the lowest on the totem pole, which meant that while everyone else was making paper, I barely got $20 a day from my mans in them. With that, I would buy one bag of smoke, a 40 ounce, a pack of cigarettes, and try to eat with the rest. But not having the thick stack of bills in my pocket didn't bother me because folks knew that I was always game. Whatever was going down, whether it was rapping or scrapping, everyone knew X would be the first, me and Boomer. But Baltimore had a dark side too, and it started with the rats. There were rats everywhere. They were huge, ugly beasts that waddled around up the streets and through the alleys, feeding off of everything in their path. Big piles of garbage, often higher than the fence to your house, marked the city's worst areas, and rats would be all through them. When you walked past, you could see the whole pile moving with the teams of rodents that were feasting inside. That sucked, especially in the winter when it was too cold to go around and I had to walk straight through those alleys late at night. It made you want to kick yourself in the ass. What the fuck am I doing here? If I could have found a cab or a bus to jump in at those moments, I would have gone right back to Yonkers. There weren't many real cabs in Baltimore anyway, though. Only hacks. Hacks were people who used their own cars as cabs. They weren't licensed and didn't put any signs in their car. They just drove around in their old, beat up Oldsmobile or Chevy 4 doors, waiting for people to flag them down. They wouldn't charge you very much if you needed a ride downtown. And if you needed some dough, well, you could bet they had $50 or $60 on them at the end of a night. Now you had to make sure you knew a place before you decided to cross the line in that place because you could fuck around and get left in an abandoned building somewhere where no one would ever find you. Home was one thing. You knew who lived where and who would or would not admit to seeing something. You knew who wasn't going to kill you anyway because he knew your mama and them. But being in another state was different. So I knew I was in deep in Baltimore when I started getting comfortable enough to rob hacks. And just like in YO, doing dirt became a way for me to get by. Every few weeks, I would try to go home to see Tashira and Xavier. I missed them, missed our apartment, missed watching movies all night and drinking iced tea. But Baltimore was where I needed to be. This was where my peoples were. This was where I had any chance of making a living. And this is where I started writing a bunch of rhymes again.